There are 5 lies that most married men end up believing into because the world is working against us as Christian married men who want to lead our households. Just like every lie from Satan, as you believe into it more, the more power it holds into you. And these 5 lies that you're believing into are crippling you from being the husband, the father, and the leader that you're meant to be inside of your household. So today we're going to break down those 5 lies. But before we get too far, welcome to Forged Through Fire. My name's Logan, where we are dedicated to making men through the process of refining them as fire, just as 1 Peter 1 verses 6 and 7 talk about how we are meant to celebrate and rejoice in our great trials, because even though gold is worth values and is refined through fire, we are far more precious, and our trials are what make us who we are. And so through the process of going through the trials, the tribulations, the hardships, and the difficulties inside of life, marriage that throws at men, the world is working against us as Christian married men who want to do the best for our kids, who want to do the best for our wives, and who want to do best to glorify God in the process. Everything is working against you, and that's why this channel is dedicated to helping you be the man, husband, and father that you are meant to be, to give glory and honor to God in the process, while keeping sacredity inside of your marriage and leading your children as they get further along in life. As we dive into this today, let's get into it. All right, we're going to dive into lie number 1. And lie number 1 is that if you provide for your family financially, you are doing your part. And this is a common kryptonite for most men inside of marriage. They believe that their role is to provide, and that is correct. We are 100% called biblically to be the providers inside of the household, but most men think that it stops there, and that is not true. Your role inside of the family is to be the provider, but providing without presence is lacking in every way. You are to be the provider. You are to go out. You are to make the income. You are to be the man who is leading your family financially and physically so that your family can flourish. But if you are not present with your kids in the process, there's no point in anything that you're doing. Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children, but bring them up with discipline." You cannot be a father who is raising your children up, providing for them, and raising them to be disciplined members inside of God's household if you are not present with your children. The process of providing is the time-consuming piece that takes so much time out of our days and takes us as men who think that we are doing our part, and where Satan gets into our head is by telling us when we hit that clock out button at work, we're done, we've done our part, we've provided for our family, there's nothing further for us to do at that moment with our family. And that is simply a lie from Satan that is trying to cripple you from building relationship with your family. You are called to provide, and you are called to then be present with your children. If you have a job that takes you away from home, when you show up and walk in that door, the harder job starts. You think that your job is hard while you are away and you are at work inside of an office, clocking in and clocking out. Remember that God has called you as a leader to lead your children to know and understand and have a relationship with God. And that is far more valuable than any job that you are working. I get stuck in this all the time myself. I'm constantly working, and I'm constantly trying to balance when I'm spending time with my kids and being present with my kids compared to when I have to work to provide for my family so that I can be there. It's very difficult being a husband who's working while you have a stay-at-home wife with a couple kids at home and you only have one income source. It requires you to work longer days. It requires you to work longer hours. I'm not saying that you're not tired. I'm not saying that I don't understand it. What I'm telling you is when you walk in that door, be present with your kids, be present with your wife, because that is what you are called to do. The moment that you stop being present is the moment that Satan starts slipping in, putting doubts inside of your wife's mind, putting fear inside of your kids as they grow further apart from you. You only have so many years from your kids, and every year the older they get, the more opinions they have themselves, the more they want to run their own lives, the more they get free-willed, the less influence you have on them. Every year the clock ticks, and every year you lose influence over your kids. Capitalize on the time that you have now if you want to have a relationship with your kids when they're older. Take the time that you have. Be present when you walk in the door. Spend the time with your kids while you can, because time is short and your job is to be present. To echo this does not only apply to kids though. I know I'm hitting this on kids because kids, your time is short and your time is limited. If you walk in the door and are only present with your kids, and you walk in the door and are only caring about work, you're leaving a member of your family out that you are called to serve, and that is your wife. Your wife is there with you till the end. You vowed to be with your wife until death do you part. That means that you have to be present with your wife. It might mean having conversations that to you don't feel that important. It might mean sitting through things that don't feel that big of a time thing. It might mean saying no to going to do something that you want to do because you'd rather be present with your wife. But remember, if you only focus on you, if you only focus on your kids, your marriage will deteriorate in the process. You are called to provide for everyone in your household, and each member of your household needs you to provide in a different way. Each one of them needs you to be present. As a whole and individually, each one of them requires your attention. Each one of them requires you to be present. So when you walk in that door, it is not just for your kids, it is not just for your wife, and it is rarely ever for you. It is for your family. You walk in that door, you take care of your wife, you're present with your wife, you take care of your kids, and you're present with your kids. If you want to have a relationship, be the man that God has called you to be. That is a necessary step in every marriage for every man to be able to be the husband and father that he is called to be. Lie number 2 inside of the 5 lies is happy wife, happy life. And this goes echo with the people who say happy house, happy spouse to balance it by saying if both the spouses are happy, great. No, God never called you to appease your wife. Nowhere in scripture does he say make your wife happy. Though this is a common thing that in marriage, we try to make our spouses happy. We try to do things for our wives. We try to do things to make our marriage better. But it is never said that we are called to appease or make our wives happy. What scripture tells us to do is to be leaders. It says that we are to treat our wives as Christ treated the church, willing to lay down our lives for her, your spouse. But he did not do that from a place of submission. He did not do that from a place of not having authority. He did not do that just because. He did it from a place of authority, leadership, stance, and to send the message that he is willing to go as far as it takes for the church because he is willing to sacrifice himself for the church. So let me ask, if you think that you're supposed to have a happy wife in order to have a happy life, what are you doing to lead your wife when you're trying to make her happy? Most of the time that trying to make our wives happy means just saying, okay, being submissive. One of the most damaging things that most men can be is submissive to their wives and just giving into everything because it is not coming from a place of leadership. Do not hear me tell you right now that this just means don't do anything that your wife wants, but it means to lead your wife through what she wants. It means to take her through life. You are not called to sit on the sideline and watch. You are not called to be a bystander in the life of your wife. You are called to lead your wife. Just as the Bible says that a wife will leave her family and cleave to her husband, that means that you are to pick up the gauntlet of being the physical and spiritual leader for your wife. When she needs a man to step in and be there for her, that is you. When she needs somebody to lead her closer to Christ, that is you. When it is required for you to be the man. Happy wife, happy life is the furthest thing from the truth when it comes to Christianity, and it is one of the most common lies that people tell themselves about marriage that gets them stuck into a complacent and submissive point inside of their marriage. You are called to lead your wife. If you step into the role as the leader of your household, you have to be the man who is leading from a place that you are equipped to lead. This does not mean that you don't go to church, you don't read the Bible, you're not taking care of yourself physically, you don't give a crap about anything going on in your life, and you're trying to lead your wife. This means that you have to be taking care of yourself physically. This means you have to be taking care of your work physically. This means you have to be building your spiritual side with God. This means you have to be building an emotional side with your wife. For most men, the easy part to disconnect emotionally so that they aren't paying attention to their wives is one of the most damaging things in a relationship. And you cannot lead someone if they are not emotionally connected to you, at least in some level. You have to be able to bring in emotion so that she feels connected to you, so that you can step in front of her and lead her in the way that she needs you to lead. And if you're doing it from a place of submission, you're not leading. You're just recommending. Stop recommending to your wife and start leading your wife. Step into leadership inside of your household as Christ gave us the example of what it meant to lead our wives. As Christ died for the church, you are to lead your wife with the same level of authority, integrity, sacrifice, and willingness. And if you cannot do that, you are falling behind as the husband inside of your marriage, and it is your job to adjust it. Whether that means you need to get connected, whether that means you need people, whether that means you need somebody around you who can help you and call you out. Your friends who are telling you you don't need to worry about it are not the people that are sitting around you that you need to be surrounding yourself with if they are pulling you further away from your relationship with your wife. I don't care how good the people are. I don't care how much fun you have with them. If you are not surrounding yourself with people that make your marriage stronger, your faith stronger, your household stronger, and your finances better, you are not surrounding yourselves with people people that you should be surrounding yourselves with, and that is one of the first places that I recommend most men start in making the adjustment, is auditing who you're spending your time with. They say that you are made up of the 5 closest people to you. If that's true, who are the 5 closest people to you? Look at their lives and tell me if you want their lives. If you do not want something similar to the lives of the 5 closest people to you, you need different 5 closest people to you. And that is this first starting hold to have true accountability, to be a leader for your wife, is surrounding yourself with people who are leaders for their wives, who are better husbands and fathers and men than you currently are, so that they can lift you up, not drag you down to be worse fathers and worse husbands. Okay, let's hit on lie number 3 for the lies that we tell ourselves as husbands according to what the world says, and this is that your career comes first, your family will understand. Ties a lot into lie number 1, but the simple difference here is that your career is not the thing that you put above in sacrificing your family in order to give the excuse that you are providing a better life for them. For the Bible says, if a man gains the world and loses his soul, what has he forfeited? And if you are gaining everything and losing your family, you are forfeiting your soul. And if you don't believe that, you need to go back to what it says, when a man and woman are joined together, they become one flesh, which means that when you are losing your wife, you are losing yourself. You are losing yourself the more you grow apart from your wife, which means you have to step more into presence with your wife, not further away from it. This becomes very difficult, especially in American culture where we are driven by materialistic things. My wife and I get stuck in it. We're renting a place. We want to be able to buy a house. We have a car that has 250,000 miles on it and does not provide and hardly runs. We want to be able to do more things for our kids. We want to be able to give the material things because that's what we want, because we as flesh and blood are driven by what this world tells us we should pursue. And you have to remember there's nothing wrong with wanting things in this world. God does not say don't want anything. God actually tells us if you pray to him and see it clearly as you are praying, you will have received it. He wants us to have good lives. He wants us to have good things. Money is not the root of all evil. To clarify the Bible, for those who think money is the root of all evil, it does not say money is the root of all evil. The pursuit of money is the root of all evil is what it says. So when you are pursuing materialistic things, when you are pursuing a better career, when you are pursuing a better job, that is worse off than a man who gains nothing materialistically but is willing to sacrifice everything for his family. And if that's true, that money is not the root of all evil, it doesn't mean that it's bad for us to want things in this life. It doesn't mean that we cannot have things. It simply means that pursuing money above other things is the root of evil and is sinful. You have to start with your family, and you have to want to build from the point of having a presence with your family. You cannot have a presence with your family and solely pursue financial well-being. You can solely pursue financial well-being at the sacrifice of your family. And if that is what you want, this is not right for you. Just leave now, because I am here to try to help men who want to forge themselves into being better fathers, better husbands, and better men of God. 1 Timothy 3, 4, and 5 says he must manage his own household well, with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? Taking that context of the Bible and saying, I have to have my household in order, my wife and kids. I have to make sure my children are submissive. They are respectful. They listen. They pay attention. They are respectful to my wife and me and others. If I cannot show that I can manage my own household, how can God trust us with the church? And if we are supposed to be leaders in the house, leaders in the church, and God has called us to make disciples in the world, we have to be a part of God's church, but it starts with the family. God knows that the single catalyst that can start is your family. And if you lose that, nothing else that you're doing will matter, because you will lose your family to start. Focus on your family. Your wife first, your kids second, building the relationships, being present there, and you will watch as the rest of it transforms into a better life more abundantly than you could have believed to begin with, when you're just sitting here trying to pursue financial well-being and more things and a bigger house and a bigger car and a bigger boat and whatever it is that the next purchase that you're stuck on in your head, that I have to work hard enough to get that thing. Remind yourself, the presence in the relationship comes first. If you're doing that, there's nothing wrong with wanting other things in life. but you can't want those things more than you want the relationship with your kids. And don't tell me that you want a relationship with your kids if you are not dedicating time to building relationships with your kids. No husband can tell me that he is wanting a relationship with his kids if he is trying to actively find more ways to pull himself away from his kids. You have to be present with your wife and kids in order to build relationship with them. Moving on to lie number 4 that the world tells men when it comes to marriage. And this is that men don't have emotion. And I cannot tell you how far away from the truth this is, and yet how much I have struggled with this my entire life. From the beginning of my parents separating and me stepping into a role that I was the only man inside of my house at a very young age with my mom and my sister, and no men around to tell me how to do it, no men around to help me grow up, no men around to be the better me. The only thing that you learn at that age is what men on TV do. And when you watch men on TV, you see no emotion, you see macho, big guys who don't care and are tough, and you watch the typical man persona that the world puts on telling you men should not have emotion. And yet, do you know what one of the easiest scriptures to memorize is? Jesus wept. 2 words, actual verse. John 11:35. I did have to look it up. I remember the verse, but I did have to look up what the context was. John 11:35. Jesus wept. Jesus, multiple times throughout his ministry while he was here on work, showed the emotional side. Spoke from a place of power and influence, but of connection and care. He wept for others. He cried at the end. He asked why God forsaked him while he was hanging on the cross. When you can sit here and look at the example of who we are called to be and try to be like, though we will never be it, Jesus wept. You cannot tell me that you are meant to not show emotion. When you think about some of the times that you have been the most connected to your wife and your kids, what are the moments that you think of? Most people think of some of the most connected times being some of the saddest moments and some of the happiest moments. And these are some of the most filling and large emotions that children can have, right? Anger comes and goes, but it's typically in small waves because they haven't figured out the grudge side yet, or unless you have teenagers, totally different there. But for the most part, kids come and go of 2 great emotions: joy and sadness. And sadness is usually the catalyst over anger, because anger is actually a secondary emotion. It does not take primary form. You cannot firsthand be angry. You are secondhand angry. Typically, there's something underlining that. You're hurt, you're sad, you're let down, somebody forsaked you. Those are the things that sit under the surface of anger. Anger is the outward expression of the emotion, but it's actually secondary. So most of the time for kids, even when they're angry, it's because they're sad. And so kids express most of their emotions in joy and sadness. So tell me, if you can remember some of the best moments with your kids through moments of joy and sadness, how do you think your kids can connect with you if you express no emotion? You have to be willing to show your kids how to express emotion. Who are they learning from? They're learning from you. You're the leader inside of the house. And if you cannot show your kids how to manage emotion, handle emotion, and be willing to sit in emotion, managing emotion is not suppression. Managing emotion is not stuffing it down. Managing emotion is not being willing to say, that feels sad, but I'm just not going to feel it because it isn't that important. That is not managing your emotion. Managing emotion is the willingness to sit inside of the sadness, to acknowledge the sadness when things get hard. Sadness is one of the ones that most men try to feel like they're too strong for, and they don't put off the most. Crying for a man is one of the things that makes it the hardest for him. And I can tell you, one of the moments that I grew the closest to my wife and kids was when I came in the door after I screamed and yelled and was in the wrong completely because I was emotionally frustrated, stressed, and tired, and I blamed my wife and kids for things that they were not at fault for. And after realizing how much I screwed up, I came in the door to try to ask for forgiveness, and I started breaking down in tears and crying. And all of my wife and kids surrounded me and held me and hugged me. And as a husband and a father, that moment of crying in front of my kids will always remember that Dad cried in front of them that day. And for me, it was an emotionally connecting point with my wife and my kids to be willing to cry in front of them. Most people think, why does crying matter so much? Why does sadness matter so much? Because sadness is one of your points of most vulnerability. When you're happy and excited, you're vulnerable, but mostly things don't affect you the way that they do when you're sad. When you're angry and frustrated, it's hard for things to get vulnerable for you because you're already holding up a wall. But sadness is one of those emotions that you're already at a weak point. You're already at a low sitting there. God designed emotion for a reason. We're meant to go through highs and lows. And when you're sitting in a low and you sit inside of that low with that sadness, you're at a vulnerable place as a husband. You're at a vulnerable place as a father. You're at a vulnerable place as a Christian. And when you are sitting in a vulnerable place, that is the place that people can break through the most. I love the analogy of an onion, right? Analogy of an onion is that we're all onions and we all have layers to us. And what we have to do is we have to break through the onion. Sadness and sitting in sadness, the vulnerability is like taking a knife and just cutting straight to the core of that onion. You don't have to peel anything back when you cut it with a knife, right? And that's why wounds and sadness hurt, because we're cutting straight through. And so that analogy of an onion just opening up as you cut straight to the core, you're vulnerable at that moment, but you cut straight through and you get to the real version of you and you build connection. Your job is not to be strong. Your job is to lead. And leading means leading through the pain, sitting in the pain, being forged through the pain. Fire is painful, and that is why this is forged through fire, because it is hard. It is difficult. There will be highs and there will be lows. And when we sit in those moments of low and we go through the pain and we let ourselves get vulnerable, that is when our emotional connection with our wife and our kids gets clear, easy, and memorable. And those are the moments that you will grow deeper relationships, when you are willing to show your kids that you are struggling, that you are hurting, that you are sad, that you are affected, that things are not going the way that you are putting it off to your children. There's nothing wrong with trying to put a life in front of your kids so that they don't know how bad the struggles are. But there is something to be said about sitting inside of the struggles and letting your wife and kids know about it so that they can go through it with you. We're not meant to go through that pain alone. Jesus surrounded himself with disciples and had family that he sat with and grew in relationship with. You are called to grow in relationship, and the first village that you have to grow in relationship with is your family, your wife and kids. When you sit inside of the emotional impact inside of your own household, you will grow in relationships in ways that you did not believe were possible. And heading into lie number 5 that ties directly in with the last lie, you will never be enough, so why try? So many men get stuck in the complacent life, thinking that this is all there is and I'll never be anything else, so why would I ever try to do more? Sitting in a complacent household with a father who will not lead is one of the most damaging things that you can do to your wife and your kids. Inside of Corinthians 12:9, 2 Corinthians 12:9, it says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weakness, so that the power of Christ may reset upon me." As we sit in our weakness, in our sadness, and we express it, and we are willing to be vulnerable with our wife and kids, we are then able to grow, because that is when God's strength comes out and he strengthens us. His power is made perfect through our weakness. You ever notice how if you read the Bible, almost every example of somebody who he used, they were coming from a place of weakness to start. If you look at it, Matthew was a tax collector who was hated and had no relationship and did not connect with the public, and Jesus called him. David was a small farm boy on a ranch trying to just shepherd his sheep and take care of them, and he was called to fight Goliath, and because of that, he led nations to follow. Almost every example comes from a place of weakness, because when we are weak and vulnerable and honest, God is able to shine through us. It is when we pretend to be something that we are not that God cannot shine through us, because the only way that you are pretending to be something you're not is when you're letting pride and ego get in the way. You are called to be so much more than you are willing to let yourself believe, because you believe that if you fail or things get hard, you'll be at a place of weakness and you will not be usable and you will fail your family. And it is only through those moments that you step into faith and try to become the man that you think that you are called to be, that God will be able to use you, and his perfection will shine through your weakness, and he will pull you into something far greater than you ever thought was possible for your life. You have a purpose. You have a calling. And whether you're willing to step into it or you're just sitting on the sidelines hoping that life will magically get better, you're not leading at that point, you're not being vulnerable at that point, and you're not willing to step into God's calling. The only way that this truly happens and transformation begins is when you're willing to step in, be vulnerable, be honest, show when you are scared or in fear or hurting, and grow in relationship with your wife and kids through that. When you get rid of these 5 lies and you step into the true calling that God has for you, and you focus on building your household, and you focus on God, you will watch as you transform and become something that you didn't even know was possible, because you have to remember, God is infinite, all-knowing, all-possible, and he has a plan for your life. The greatest thing that you could possibly see yourself doing, there's a likelihood that God has something greater in store for you that you don't even see yet because you're not willing to be led by God and lead your family. You have to be willing to be led by God first and then lead your family second. And when you do those 2 things and step into the calling that you have, your entire life will start to shift. It might not be overnight, might not be next week, might not be this year, but your life will transform, and you will look back one day and go, I cannot believe that is where I was inside of my marriage. I cannot believe that is where I was stuck inside of my relationship. I cannot believe that is the man that I was being at one point. When you shed these 5 lies and step more into your calling and purpose, God will use you in ways that you did not know was possible. As always, remember, men, we are here to be forged through the fire as you are going through the struggles and you are going through the hardship. That is part of the process. It is okay to go through those moments. Remember that we are simply being refined into the men that we have to be. We are being stuck inside of the fire, heated to the core, so that then we can be yielded into the weapon that God has for you and the design that he has for you. So always remember, when you're going through the hard times, you are not alone in this. You are not fighting this battle alone. Iron sharpens iron, just as one man is there to sharpen another. I am here for you, my brothers. We are in this together as we go through the process of trying to be better fathers, better husbands, and better men of God. Subscribe down below. If you like this, drop a comment. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was. Hit the like button for me and share this with someone that can use this information today. And I'll see you guys on the next one.